Salutations, fam. This is Dark Solarian from Haltessiagaming, and boy, do I have a deck profile for y'all today. So to give some context, because the context is very necessary to understand. It's the end of our competitive Yu-Gi-Oh season. At the end of every Yu-Gi-Oh season, Team Net hosts a championship invitational of the 16 best performing players across all of their events that season. I've qualified for it every single time, but I haven't always been able to play in the championship because my work schedule doesn't always line up. This one in particular was one of the events where this was one of the championship invitationals that I would have to work that day, so I wasn't able to play in the event fully, but I decided to still show up and that I would just drop after Swiss because I knew I wouldn't be able to play in top 8 because I had to go to work. And so because I knew that I was just going to play Swiss and then drop, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to play, I'm not going to play Dragon Link, I'm just going to play Blue Eyes, I'm going to, play to have a good time and just play a deck that I really enjoy playing, as opposed to playing what I think is the best deck that I could possibly bring, which probably would have been Dragon Link, or it probably would have been some Bistio Dragon Link deck, if I'm gonna be real. And I won every single game that I played. It was really funny. You will notice that this pile is shorter because I didn't have a side deck. I woke up late, threw this together. This is 60 cards because typically when I'm building a deck, I'll just have a pile of cards that I'm considering for ideas. I didn't really have time to do all the math and think about everything. I just kind of threw everything together and I was like, okay, and I just kind of took cards out, and then I looked at the time. I was like, oh my gosh, and then I just kind of left. And so I have a 60 card main deck and no side deck. And yeah, it was pretty wild. And yeah, I won every game I played. I went undefeated in Swiss, and then I dropped and went to work. It was it was amazing. Yeah, I'm very, very happy with how the deck performed. I cannot stress enough, this deck is not optimized. It is not optimized. I know I said it twice, but again, it is not optimized. I will probably make a follow-up video with me actually going through the math and optimizing the ratios and all that. This was basically just I threw everything together and ran to the tournament and played. The deck idea is definitely solid, but again, the deck is not optimized. There are a lot of cards in here that you should not play, and there's one card in here in particular that you definitely shouldn't play, but I played because it was really funny, and I really wanted to play the card, and I really wanted to resolve the card, and I basically built the deck around resolving that one card. As I'm going through the deck, I want to see if you can guess what the card is. So, I'm going to start with the extra deck first to kind of give you more hints. So, the extra deck first card, Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon, Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate, Blue Eyes Twin Burst, and Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. These are my 3 Blue Eyes fusions that I am playing. Then we have 1 copy of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, 1 copy of Lubellion, 1 copy of Titaniclad, 2 copies of Albion, 1 Albalonatus, 1 Queritus, 1 copy of Guardian Chimera. This card overperformed. I am so glad I added this to the extra. I didn't ever summon it off of Branded in Red, but I just hard fusioned into it with the field spell a couple of times, and it's so strong. Just that non-targeting pop too, and it's a really high statted monster. 33 is very, very strong. And then you have, lastly, 2 copies of Guardian Chimera, 2 copies of Garura, 2 copies of Garura, 1 copy of Entis, and 1 copy of Almirage, and that's it for the 15-card extra deck. Yeah, pretty standard, in line with Branded Blue Eyes. It's not anything super spicy with the extra. And onto the main deck. So now this is going to surprise a lot of people because I haven't done this in like I'm not sure how many years, because but like I said, I wanted to build my deck around resolving one card. And in order to resolve that card and really use it to its full capacity, you have to play 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. So I am playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon, 2 copies of Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, 3 copies of Stone of Ancients, 1 Stone of Legend, 5 Blue Eyes Monsters, and the stones. Then I am playing 3 copies of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. Um, I just like the card. I wanted more stuff to be able to just like I said, it was kind of a pile. It's kind of a pile. Like I said, the ratios are not optimized. It's a pile. Then we have 2 copies of Fallen Albaz. It's another thing I don't really do that often. I wanted to try out 2 Albaz. The second Albaz never came up, so who knows? I might end up, trimming it back down to 1. Who knows? 1 copy of Despian Tragedy, 2 copies of Spriggan's Kit, 3 copies of Aluber. Yeah, 3 copies of Aluber. And then we have 3 copies of Dogmatica Ecclesia, 1 copy of Maximus, 1 copy of Floor. Just real quick, some people might be like, "You're playing Maximus in tier format? You're crazy." Hey, you can just not activate the effect. Yeah, I definitely didn't think about that at first either, but you can just summon this as a 3K body if you don't know what they're playing. But if you do know what they're playing, you know that they're not going to benefit from your Maximus, you can just activate Maximus and get a lot more advantage. And it's just, an extra search target. It's an extra search target, and, it's also a 3K body. The Fleur de Lis, and 1 copy of Tri Brigade Mercurier. I never actually saw this, but I just like having the extra utility. Like I said, it's a pile. And then 1 copy of Bestial Magnum. Now, the story about this is, remember how I said I was kind of throwing stuff out and I was rushing? So at home, I miscounted my deck. And I counted 61 cards, so I took something out and I left. And when I got there and I was filling out my deck list, I realized I only had 59 cards in my deck. So I just pulled out my Dragon Link deck that was fully built and ready to play, and I pulled a copy of Magnemute out of my Dragon Link deck and just threw it in here. I was like, well, it's a good hand trap, and it does search, the dragons, so why not? I probably should have grabbed a Call By now that I think about it, but like I said, this deck is not optimized, so... And now, the card that I really, really wanted to resolve, that I built the deck around, why I'm playing so many Blue Eyes cards. I am playing 1 copy of Rage with Eyes of Blue. Now, disclaimer, this card's not good, okay? This card is not good. It's terrible. It's a really bad card. But now that I've gotten that disclaimer out of the way, let me start coping. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. This card is not actually as hard to... It's not actually that bad. The thing is, with modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, or rather, with the way the game shifted, I want to say 2018-ish, right? Once we shifted into that really combo-heavy style of Yu-Gi-Oh!, a lot of cards got written off because of the fact that they are not immediately giving you value. A lot of cards get deemed as bad if they are not able to immediately win the game. And the reality is that that style of Yu-Gi-Oh! Of the game only lasting 2 turns, being over on the first turn, isn't really how the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been for really the last year, if I'm going to be real. Once the beginning of this year, the game kind of shifted to a different style of Yu-Gi-Oh! We don't really see, combo decks that are making an unbreakable board, using all the resources, making this unbreakable board. Your opponent can't play at all, and then, on turn 3, they OTK you. We don't really see those kinds of decks that much, because the fact of the matter is that those type of decks are not that good in the format anymore, because of the fact that if you're playing that kind of deck, you're going to lose to the ridiculous amount of cards that are specifically designed to beat that style of deck. There are so many ridiculous board breakers and equalizers in the game that you can't play that type of deck anymore. So the style of deck that sees the most play nowadays are decks that are able to put up something, they're able to really, really consistently put up some amount of interruptions, not like anything ridiculous, like you literally aren't able to play the game level of interruption, but just enough to slow your opponent down. But the thing about these style of decks is that if you like break their board, they will be able to have a follow up, and that grind game aspect has become the main defining factor of most of the best decks in the format nowadays. And again, this card is not good, but it's not good, but it's also not that bad actually. So the thing about this card is that you read the first line of text and you immediately write it off. I don't blame you. I did the same thing. Banish everything. Special 3 blue eyes. You can only summon blue eyes. That's not good. However, when you really like look at the context of it, at the end of the day, this is one card that puts 9,000 damage on the board. And when you look at that sentence, one card puts 9,000 damage on the board on a quick play spell that can be activated at any point during the turn is kind of strong, you know? And the main thing about this card is that you will not be able to just activate this card by itself when you win the game. This is not really a turn 1 card. It's more of a turn 3 card. The thing is, you can turn 1 build your board, turn 2 interrupt your opponent, turn 3 have your monsters that are already on the board attack your opponent, break the rest of their board, and then still in the battle phase activate this card and suddenly put 9,000 damage on the board and OTK them out of nowhere. The thing about this card is that, and then the other thing is that like, oh, but if they negate it, you banish your whole field and you just lose the game. No, the banish is not cost. It's part of the effect. It is part of the effect to banish. It is just one long effect. Banish this card and as many cards as possible from your hand, field, or graveyard face down, and if you do, special summon up to 3 Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck. It is just one effect. So if they Ash this or Ghost Spell this or they have some way to stop this from resolving, you don't lose anything. You don't lose anything. So it's either this card resolves and you just OTK your opponent, or they negate it and, well, you just continue playing the grind game. But this card allows the deck the ability to just have so much more potential to OTK, which was a thing that Blue Eyes could already do, but it wasn't really a thing in the control variant of Blue Eyes, which was always the better variant to play. Being able to just have that ridiculous OTK potential in the control variant, in the better variant of Blue Eyes, really amps the deck up to 11. And you might be thinking, okay, but it's a one-of. How are you consistently accessing this? You have 2 separate cards that can search this. Both True Light and Bingo Machine Go can get you access to this. So it's not actually that crazy. And I did actually resolve this one time in the event. It did win me one of my matches. The same scenario, we got into a grind game, broke his board, saw our clear field, activated Rage, and then just OTK'd. Now, another thing, this doesn't have to summon 3 Blue Eyes. You can summon up to 3 Blue Eyes. And even if you're not summoning 3 Blue Eyes and getting 9,000 damage, even summoning 2 is still 6,000 damage, which is pretty close to an OTK. So if you've attacked over a board, even if you can't summon 3 Blue Eyes, a lot of times summoning the 2 will still be an OTK. And it can only summon from deck, but you happen to have an in-archetype way to set this card up in Ultimate Fusion. And that is why I'm playing the 3 Blue Eyes Fusions that I am. The 3 Blue Eyes Fusions that I'm playing basically allow me to, with Ultimate Fusion, shuffle back, be able to, no matter how many Blue Eyes are in rotation, I will always be able to shuffle back all of them to set up this card. So, yeah, very much cope, very much not a good card, but it's not that bad. And I had a good time. But anyway, moving on with the rest of the deck profile, we have 1 copy of the Field Spell, 1 copy of Branded in Red, 1 copy of Fusion Deployment, 1 copy of Dragon Shrine, 1 Foolish Burial. This is why I was playing the Tragedy. I liked being able to play 1 copy of Foolish and have it be a card that can send Stone, card that can send Jet, but also be able to send Tragedy to start to lure and get access to Branded Fusion. So I like the versatility of Foolish a bit more than Dragon Shrine, but like, Like I said, deck's not optimized. We'll probably see some changes in the future. 2 copies of Ultimate Fusion because I want to draw this. So the thing is, if you see True Light, you can set up the Rage OTK on like turn 5. But if you open like any piece of the like OTK, you can OTK them turn 3. Like literally, it's so silly. And then we have 2 copies of Bingo Machine Go. I opened this quite a few times actually. I think every single time I ended up searching the Blue Eyes White Dragon because I already had True Light, which is really funny. 2 copies of Branded Opening. Actually, hold up. That pile's getting a little... Let's go ahead and slide it over. 2 copies of Branded Opening. Why 2 copies of Branded Opening? I couldn't find my third in time. So, like I said, we threw this deck together. 3 copies of Branded Fusion. 3 copies of Nadir Servant. This card is so good for the deck. I cannot stress enough how much this changed, how much impact it has to be able to have 3 Nadir. Yeah, 3 Nadir. Very, very good. And then that's the last of the spell cards. Now we move on to the traps. We're playing 15 of them. We have 1 copy of Dogmatic Punishment, 1 copy of Branded Banishment, 1 copy of Branded Retribution, 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, 3 copies of Skill Drain, and 3 copies of TC Boo, and then 3 copies of True Light. Yeah, and that's it for the deck. I do not have a side deck. I didn't have time to like put one together. Yeah, and like I told my opponents that every single time. I was like, yeah, I don't have a side deck. So and then like one of my opponents, after game 1 finished, I shuffled my deck and I like gave it to him to cut. And he was like, and he realized that I didn't have a separate like pile of cards for my side, and he was like, wait, you were being serious? And I was like, why would I lie about that? But yeah, no side deck, 60 card Bane, 15 card extra. We just threw this deck together. But let's be real, Snowball effect is very strong, Floodgates are strong, and Branded Fusion and Nadir are a lot stronger in a format where no one's playing Ash. Yep. It was a very, very fun deck. I very much enjoyed it. Do not play this variant unless you are just trying to have fun like me. I will probably optimize the deck and release another deck profile later on. But I just had to tell this story. I had to showcase this deck list. I had to be able to say that I had to tell the story of how I main deck Rage with Eyes of Blue in a 60-card Blue Eyes deck without a side deck and went undefeated at the OTS Invitational Championship. That is just too funny to me. In a format, in a almost tier 0 format, Ishizu tier is incredibly dominant, where like, you know, there's just only like meta decks in attendance. I took Blue Eyes, main decking Rage with Eyes of Blue, 60 card Blue Eyes, main decking Rage with Eyes of Blue with no side deck, and won every single match 2-0. Yu-Gi-Oh! So stupid sometimes. But anyway, that's going to be it. This has been Dark Swing from Haltessiagaming. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with your friends. Make sure to check out my description. I've got some helpful links in there. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and please go drink some water. Come on, button, don't do this.